In a quiet, windowless laboratory at Kyoto University, a researcher steps forward, looks a border collie dead in the eye, and points firmly toward an empty plastic container. The dog doesn't run. She doesn't wag her tail. She doesn't even tilt her head in confusion. Instead, she stands entirely frozen, tracking the gesture, looking at the human's face, and deliberately staying exactly where she is. To a casual observer, this looks like nothing. But to the behavioral scientists in the room, this single moment of total stillness is a profound anomaly. It is the moment a domestic animal openly revolts against a human command. Just minutes earlier, this exact researcher had played a game with the dog. In the first round, they pointed to a container hidden from the dog's view. There was food inside. The dog ran, discovered the reward, and trust was established. In the second round, the researcher pointed again. But this time, the container was entirely empty. The human had just lied in the only linguistic currency a domestic dog truly understands, the cooperative social gesture. Now, we are in round 3. The researcher points again. This time, there actually is food inside the bucket. The human knows it, but the dog refuses to move. 34 dogs went through this exact protocol. And what mystified the research team wasn't that some of the dogs figured out the trick. It was that every single one of them made the exact same choice to ignore the liar. If you pull up a search engine right now and type in the phrase, "Can dogs sense bad people?" you will find yourself drowning in thousands of articles, blog posts, and forum threads screaming the exact same answer. Yes, absolutely. Dogs have a sixth sense. They can read your aura. They just know. The triple channel assessment. Think about the last time a stranger walked into your home. Within the first 3 seconds, long before you have finished saying your initial hello, your dog has already initiated a behavioral diagnostic process that would put most human investigators to shame. It happens so seamlessly, so instantly, that to us, it looks like unexplainable instinct. In reality, your dog's brain is processing 3 distinct streams of information simultaneously. We can break this down as the triple channel assessment. The first channel is kinetic geometry. While humans are easily distracted by a smiling face or polite words, dogs look at the structural mechanics of the whole body. They are hypersensitive to motion patterns. They notice how a person's center of gravity shifts when they step across the threshold. They notice whether the hands are hanging loosely or clenched with subtle tension. They read the trajectory of approach. A relaxed human moves in a gentle, slightly curved path, whereas a tense, unpredictable, or aggressive human tends to move in a rigid, direct, and invasive line. Your dog registers this geometry before the person has even made eye contact with you. At the exact same microsecond, they are running a chemical analysis. A dog's olfactory system doesn't just smell food, it pulls complex chemical information right out of the air. When a human experiences a spike in nervousness, hidden malice, or fear, their body chemistry shifts, releasing volatile organic compounds through sweat and breath. We cannot perceive these microscopic changes. To a dog, however, these chemical shifts are loud, immediate data points. They aren't diagnosing your guest's moral character. They are reading the literal, real-time chemical weather of their body. But it's the third channel that most pet owners miss entirely. Your dog is reading you. Your dog is a master historian of your specific personal behavior. They have spent years mapping the exact resting state of your muscles, the baseline tonality of your voice, and the rhythmic pattern of your breathing. When a stranger enters the environment, your dog watches how your body reacts to them. A split-second tightening of your hand or a subtle shift in your vocal pitch is an explicit piece of social data. The credentials of trust. When Dr. Akiko Takaoka published the definitive data from her pointing experiments in 2015, she wanted to answer a highly specific question. Do dogs automatically follow human gestures out of raw, hardwired obedience, or do they actively evaluate the sanity and reliability of the person making the gesture? The data proved something remarkable. The moment a human breaks their unwritten contract with a dog by pointing them toward a lie, the dog doesn't just get confused. They actively devalue the reliability of that specific human asset. But it was the second phase of Takaoka's experiment that elevated this study from merely interesting to absolutely stunning. The research team decided to see if the dogs had lost faith in human gestures altogether. They brought in a completely new stranger to perform the exact same pointing task. Instantly, the dogs cooperated. This revealed a critical truth about canine intelligence. The dogs hadn't become cynical, nor had they developed a blanket suspicion of humans. They had simply filed a highly specific behavioral complaint against one individual, stripped that person of their trust credentials, and moved on. Dr. John Bradshaw, a leading animal behaviorist at the University of Bristol who analyzed the study, pointed out an evolutionary reality we often overlook. Dogs have a profound biological craving for predictability. When a human behaves inconsistently or deceitfully, it doesn't just break a rule, it introduces chaotic noise into the dog's environment. Chaos is a direct threat to survival in the animal kingdom. Your dog isn't making a moral judgment about whether lying is bad. They are protecting their mental energy from an unpredictable asset. Fascinatingly, a later study out of the University of Vienna revealed that this ability to track human intent varies wildly by breed genetics. When testing 260 dogs to see if they could tell the difference between a human who was genuinely mistaken versus a human who was intentionally lying, cooperative working breeds, like retrievers, shepherds, and border collies, excelled at catching the deception. They stayed put when the human lied on purpose. The altruistic auditor. But canine assessment goes infinitely deeper than tracking who is reliable to them directly. It turns out, your dog is actively auditing how humans treat you. In another laboratory at Kyoto University, researcher Hitomi Chijiwa set up an ingenious social experiment. A dog sat in a room and watched their own owner try desperately to open a sealed container. The owner turned to a nearby stranger and explicitly gestured for help. The experiment was run in two distinct conditions. In the first condition, the stranger stepped in and helped the owner open the box. In the second condition, the stranger deliberately turned away, crossed their arms, and refused to look at the owner. A third person sat in the room the entire time, remaining completely neutral. Once the interaction was over, both the actor and the neutral bystander stood up and offered the dog an identical treat at the exact same time, using zero eye contact to avoid any accidental cueing. When the stranger had been helpful to the owner, the dog showed no preference, happily taking food from anyone. But when the stranger had actively snubbed and refused to help their owner, the dog executed a total boycott. They walked right past the offered treat, ignored the food, and chose the neutral bystander. Let the weight of that data land for a second. A domestic dog willingly turned down a free, high-value resource from someone who had been unkind, not to the dog itself, but to their human. The scientific community calls this third-party affective evaluation. Before this study, it had almost never been documented in a non-primate species. It proved that dogs aren't just calculating self-interest. They are tracking social justice within their pack. But here is the absolute kicker of Chijiwa's discovery. The dogs didn't actually reward the helpful stranger. The helpful person got no extra affection or bonus points. The dogs simply viciously punished the unhelpful one. Evolutionary biologists call this a heavy negativity bias. In the brutal mathematics of survival, remembering who is nice to you is a luxury. Remembering who is hostile or uncooperative keeps you alive. Your dog doesn't care about a stranger's generic generosity, but they maintain a flawless, unyielding list of exactly who refuses to back you up in a moment of frustration.